The next neighborhood I would talk about is no other than downtown Boston. One of the first 13 colonies, it's where America first took its battlegrounds. This is downtown Boston. Boston sits on the Massachusetts Bay, an eastern shoreline that faces the Atlantic Ocean. At about 675,000 people, it ranks as the 25th most populous city in the U.S. When looking at the city from a map, you may notice the bodies of water cutting the land into pieces. These waterways play a major role in Boston's cultural development in that it divides the city into different neighborhoods. Typically, the first thing that stands out is downtown, which marks the first start of the city's foundation. To understand how this became true, we must look at the first people who settled here. Let's go! Before being colonized, the land of modern downtown was known as the Shawm Peninsula. The Massachusetts tribe were the first to settle here. The name Massachusetts means at the Great Hill, which likely refers to the Blue Hills south of Boston. Before Puritans settled the peninsula, the area was already set to be established by the Cambridge Agreement. This created the Massachusetts Bay Colony, signed by the second governor John Winthrop back in England. John Winthrop had embarked on April 8, 1630, with 11 other ships that sailed to the colony. The crew docked at Salem and established a colony in Charlestown. But because of the lack of fresh water, the Puritans decided to move into the Shawm Peninsula in September 1630, now modern-day Boston. With the town's oceanfront location, it became widely successful in trade, manufacturing, and maritime industry. In 1822, citizens voted for the town of Boston to become the city of Boston, which now had a population of 46,000. Boston was the largest of the 13 colonies until Philadelphia and New York surpassed it in the 18th century. Post-revolution, the city began to struggle financially during the early 1800s, but this wouldn't last very long with the coming of the 19th century. Immigration was key to Boston's economic success. Beginning in the 1820s, Europeans such as Irish, Germans, Lebanese, French Canadians, Russian, and Polish Jews started moving to Boston in search for work and generally a better life. The Irish were the first group to settle, escaping the Great Famine back home. By the 1850s, there were 35,000 Irish living in Boston, settling in the neighborhoods of Charlestown and Southie. In the 1880s, the city saw an increasing number of Italians and Jews move in. As you may know, Italians were a major part of Boston's identity, settling in the neighborhoods of Eastie and the North End. Both Irish and Italians were part of the city's political life. Popular figures like Andrew Carnegie, the Kennedys, and more recently, Mayor Marty Walsh have all had Irish ancestry. Boston's longest-serving mayor, Thomas Menino, was Italian and served for 21 years. White Americans that did not identify as European were known as Yankees. The ones who were wealthy mostly lived in central Boston, such as Back Bay and Beacon Hill. In the 1820s, the city began reconstructing itself through landfill. Former hills like Beacon Hill were leveled to fill in the gaps of the Shawm Peninsula. The once distinct neck connecting the peninsula to Dorchester was now filled in, creating the South End neighborhood. Another hill, Mount Vernon, was cut down to cover salt marshes around Boston, creating the Back Bay neighborhood. Lastly, Pemberton Hill was cut to fill in Causeway Street and the rest of West End. Before construction, these three hills were known as Tri-Mount, and modern-day Tremont Street represents that piece of history today. The most costly fire in American history became the Great Boston Fire of 1872. The city used the opportunity to reconstruct itself by using building rubble as landfill, filling in the downtown waterfront. The rest of the city, west of Boston Common, was filled in by using gravel brought from Needham Heights. The 20th century began to see the rise of architecture. Multiple bridges were built along the Charles, like the Longfellow Bridge in 1906. Cultural buildings like Fenway Park, Boston Garden, now TD Garden, and Logan Airport were also built around this time. Boston went into decline as its manufacturing hub became obsolete. The country started investing in foreign labor and businesses began moving elsewhere. The city responded by creating the Boston Redevelopment Authority, the BRA, in 1957 to renovate existing areas. In 1958, they decided to demolish the former West End neighborhood, forcing large populations of Russian and Polish Jews to relocate. Of course, this is just one of America's many instances of displacement. The BRA, now the BPDA, did other projects like transform Scollay Square into modern-day government center. The BPDA is still widely active. If you check their website, you'll see many projects they've done over all neighborhoods, including new ones. Often these projects are made to meet profit over needs, and it recycles the process of gentrification. So feel free to check them out for yourself and advocate for what you believe in. It wasn't until the 1970s that Boston began to recover financially. New high-rises sprung up as Boston's financial district and many of its hospitals began to lead the nation with technology and innovation. In the 1980s, schools like Boston University, Tufts University, Northeastern, Wentworth, UMass Boston, and more attracted many students from around the world. Because of this influx, by the 1990s, the city had a shortage of affordable housing, leaving homes skyrocketing in prices. Boston's Big Dig is the largest highway project in the United States to date. Beginning in 1991, the project was initiated to make the city more livable. It opened up lots of previous highway space, allowing parks and a waterfront to be built while the former highway was buried underground. Although Boston still faces traffic congestion today, the project was a great success in urban planning. Places like Aquarium and the North End were no longer separated by the central artery. This attracted even more people to live here and contribute towards its economy. This led to companies seeking new opportunities to invest in the city, leading to the creation of a new district. By the late 2000s, after the completion of the Big Dig in December of 2007, parts of South Boston where now previously parking spaces were open to developers. These areas used to be dangerous at night. You wouldn't want to be caught heading for your car after dark. But soon these spaces were added to Boston's ever-growing high-rise market. New offices and retail space attracted large corporations to move their headquarters here, like General Electric and Reebok. Other places include fancy restaurants, startups, and many hotels. The Seaport District has contributed a lot towards Boston's economy, but as a result, the city has become more expensive to live in. And with the rise of longtime residents moving out, the city is currently losing a major part of its culture. Gentrification continues to be a major problem for the city. Not just in downtown, but all neighborhoods of Boston have seen some type of it. The housing shortage continues to plague the Boston metro area, causing residents to move out into the suburbs or entirely out of the state. On the plus side, the city offers many opportunities for work and entertainment. The stereotypical culture of Boston will never be forgotten. Boston stands out in American television and culture for the people's dry wit and classic Boston accent. Boston accent! Boston, you know? So many cultural references are shown in media like the historic Beacon Hill, all of their sports teams, symbols of liberty, the Italians and Irish mobs, Dunkin' Donuts, Dunkin', and much more. Despite its challenges, Boston continues to be an awe-inspiring city like no other. You know the classic phrase, I gotta park my car. I gotta park my car. You know, that's a very classic Boston phrase. That's what people, especially outsiders, are used to. But, you know, we got a lot going for us. So, welcome, and I hope you enjoyed this video because that's just one of Boston's neighborhoods. Now on to the next one. I'll see you there.